Let's do a video. One of the main complaints I get from a lot of prophets is they won't hear me. They don't listen to me. They don't want to hear what it is that I have to say. And let me be raw with you. There are good reasons for them not seeing you and hearing you. For one thing, a lot of us who want to go forward because we have these gifts, we're undone. And undone means that you're still raw in the middle. You look like a baked loaf of bread, but you really don't have any real substance within you. You haven't really gone through anything to put you in position for people to receive what it is that you're saying. You haven't gone through, first of all, a relationship with God. You don't have the connectedness, the relationship, the partnership. Second, you're self-centered. You think that everybody focuses and everybody should focus on, and everything that you show should focus on what it is that you were doing and what it is that you were saying, when it's never about you. It's about God. And as long as you were self-centered and caught up in yourself, then you were not going to speak for God. You were going to speak for self. You were going to do the things that you do for self. And as long as you were doing the things for self, you're going to add on and take from what it is that God is saying to you, or what God gives you to give to somebody else, because you are still emotionally attached to yourself instead of being serious about the things of God. Because you have not gone through the backside of the desert, you don't know how to trust God and believe God, and to, whatever God tells you to do, because you haven't been broken. You haven't had the dross scraped off to make you pure gold. So you are in this position where you are still dependent on you and who you are and who you hope to become, instead of your hope being built on nothing less than Jesus' blood and righteousness. You have to be built on Jesus. Everything you do, everything you say, every move you make for the kingdom, everything that you do, you are not representing you, but you represent God. You represent the King. Anyone in the kingdom that's a part of the kingdom never represents themselves when they were a spokesperson for that kingdom, and neither do you. So because you are undone, because you are in your feelings, and speaking of feelings, there are many of you, the reason why you can't go forward, because you're still blaming people. You're still pointing your finger. Oh, they wouldn't like me. Oh, they don't like me. Oh, they this and they that. It's always somebody else, instead of you taking what it is that you went through and looking at it and pointing it to yourself and seeing how you allowed these things to happen, or how you were not prepared, or the part that you played in a thing. Now, honestly, I must say that there are some things that you went through that were not your fault, but there are a lot of things when you grow up, you will look at things, and if people didn't have access to you, if people didn't have access to the information that you gave them, they could not have done to you or treated you the way that they did. So because you were still walking around blaming other people, then God can't use you, because you're still pointing the finger at these people. And as long as you have the blame in you and the feelings towards these people, if God tell you to go minister to that person, you are not going to minister to that person, because you're in your feelings about what it is that you felt or you think or whatever. You'll hold back or add on more than what God is saying. So you're undone in the middle. So people aren't hearing you. People are seeing you. And they're seeing that you have something, but they can't hear you. They can't receive you. They can't put you into position. You are not reliable. You are not responsible. You are still speaking and feeling for yourself instead of for God. I've already said you're self-centered. The other thing is you are a follower, but not a disciple. And there's a difference in being a follower. A follower goes to church. A follower believes in Jesus. A follower, they're in a crowd and around Jesus and things of that nature. But a disciple does what Jesus does. A disciple is walking the way that Jesus wants the disciple to walk. The disciple is obeying and following and demonstrating and doing the work that he was learned, that he was mentored, that she was mentored and taught to do by the mentor. You were a mentee, and now you become a mentor to others. But because you are a follower in the crowd, still following, you're not tithing, you're not being obedient, you're living your life and doing your thing, doing what you want to do the way you want to do it, and just whatever. It's just about you. You come to church on Sunday, yeah, you have seer gifts, yeah, you're hearing, and yeah, you know some things and you can discern things, but you are not disciplined. You are not a disciple. You are not moving. You are not doing the greater works. You have gifts and you want to use your gifts, but you don't want to sacrifice and lay down and pick up your cross and follow Christ. So because you're undone, you can't move forward. You can't serve somebody bread that's baked, but it's still gooey and mushy in the middle. Another reason is because of fear. There are a lot of us who, because we are seers, because we hear things, because we know things. When we were little, starting from childhood, the enemy started to come in and show us some things and allow us to hear some things. And we've been traumatized by a lot of things. So we still have fear in us. We still have fear of people. We still have people pleasing. We still have fear of, some of the things that the enemy threatens us with. And because we still have this threat of the enemy, instead of us being a threat to the enemy, that fear is hindering and holding you back. Like, how many of you, the enemy has told you, or if you answer this call, if you go forth in this call, I'm going to do this to your children, I'm going to do this and to your family, and I'm going to break down this and threaten you with all of these things. But when you know that the enemy really has no power and his threats are just threats, because you have the authority and you are in position to plead the blood of Jesus and to cover your family and your children in prayer, and you know that no weapon formed against them shall prosper. You are not worried about the threats of the enemy. But when you don't know who you are, when you are not able to defend yourself and to defend the lies and to tear down and cast down imaginations that the enemy put in your heart, that fear rules over the faith that you should have, over your identity, over the authority of who you are. So you are not ready. You are not ready to step into and to be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. You are not able, even though you are called. It's not to negate or to say that you are not called to do a thing, because you are. You're just not prepared. You are just not ready. And as long as fear is lingering around, it's going to be an issue. And I don't mean a godly fear, because there are some fears that you ought to fear, like the reverence and the respect of God. But it's not like an afraid type of fear. It's not something that is impacting and inflicting darts and fears into you. You have a holy reverence of God, so you fear not doing what God told you to do. You get on your face in awe and you reverence God, because God is God. But any other fears, God has not given us a spirit of fear. He's given us power, love, and a sound mind. If you are not walking in power, if you are not walking in love, you are not walking in a sound mind, and you are walking in fear. And another point, let's talk about love. You don't have love for people. You barely like people. You want to use your gifts for people and to speak to people, but you don't like these people, or you don't like people, period. And because you don't like people, when God is sending you to minister to people and God wants to use you to minister to people, then your gifts are null and void, because you don't want to use the gift to impact the people, to heal the people, to set the captives free that are people that God is sending you to. You don't want to give the word to who it is that God wants you to give the word to. You don't want to go to the people where God is sending you, but you want to do it in a little congregation, in a little area, in this little space, and in a little place of where it is that you are, so that you can have people mesmerize or compare yourself and compete with the other prophets and the other people who are seeing and hearing and knowing, to show that you can do what they do, but you don't have any love. And as long as you don't have no love and you don't operate in love, then you're not operating from the heart of God. And if you're not operating from the heart of God, then everything that you're doing is in vain. So love worketh no ill towards his neighbor. God is love. And when you are operating in your gifts, you should be using your gifts out of love. But that love must be connected to God, who is love. And God, who is love, is the gift giver, who gave you the gift, who wants to use the gift so that he can also touch and impact the people that he loves, not just you. And that goes back to being self-centered. When you're undone, there's something about you where you're focused on yourself, where you're caught up in yourself, you're blaming others and not reflecting on yourself. You don't have love of other people. Everything is surrounded around you and your gifts and what you see and what you dream and what you hear, and it's coming to pass, and this is happening, and why won't they listen to me and things of that nature. But it's me, me, me. It's not about God. We already talked about the disciple. We already talked about following and not being a disciple, incomplete process, discipline or lack thereof. Like I already said, there are many of you, you're doing your own thing. You go out on Friday night, you know, you go out on Saturday, you're putting all these wines and spirits in your body and laying up and playing up and doing all of these things with all of these different people, but your gifts are still active. And you know, there is a lie. Let me say this as well. I think I said it on a different video, but there are people who will tell you that your gifts will not flow and God will dam up your gifts if you are laying and playing and things of that nature. But if you were truly called to the office of a prophet, I'm sorry, it feels like something is in my eye. When you were really called to the office, you can lay and play and do all of that stuff. The gift is not going nowhere because the gift comes without repentance. When in my earlier years, when, you know, I was at a Baptist church, I didn't know about, you know, how we're supposed to be sanctified and holy and really cherish the gifts that we have and things of that nature. This doorbell is off the hook today. But anywho, you know, I was just in the world doing my own thing, gifted, seeing in the spirit. You know, I think I gave some of my best prophecies and best warnings when I was just in the world doing whatever, but the gift never left me. I was still able to see in the spirit. I was still able to hear what God was saying and things of that nature, but I was being disobedient. And because I was disobedient, I couldn't function in the things of God as powerfully as I could. Even though I could give a word, I didn't have the power to heal. I didn't have the power to really speak life into other people, even though I could see what was going on in other people's lives, you know, and things of that nature. So people tell you that your gifts don't work, or the gifts are going to be dammed up, or they're going to stop. They may stop for some people, but they didn't stop for me. So I'm just saying. But that's not a reason to sin. When you have sin in your life, sin will stop you from being effective, even though you have the gifts, even though you're able to see, even though you're able to hear, even though you're able to discern. You're able to discern, but then you got the enemy in your ear as well, and you don't know whether you are going in the right direction. You know that you need to make a shift. God is telling you to go right, but you got that wine and spirits in you that's telling you to go left, and sometimes you'll follow the vague voice instead of following the voice that you need to follow. But you're still hearing from God, but you're hearing from the devil as well, because he has access to you. You know, he has you under the influence so that he can influence you as well. You know, you're laying up with people and having sex with people and imparting things into people. I think I shared in another video, I'm quite sure I did, but there was also a time when I was in a relationship, and this gentleman, he was picking up, being able to dream and to see in the spirit and things of that nature that he wasn't able to see before and haven't been able to see after, since we've been in a relationship, because it was him picking up what was in me. But I say all of that to say, when you are in sin, this can hinder you from people really receiving and accepting what it is that you have. Now, people in the world who don't know, like the church is not going to accept you knowing that you are in sin and things of that nature. That's just point blank, period, you know. But with people in the world, you know, because I was flowing in these gifts and seeing and hearing what God wanted me to do and following the instructions of what God was telling me to do, going warning people and things of that nature, I was in sin, but it was still working. But I didn't have the power, as I said, to really do anything, I didn't know what the further instruction was. Let's put it like that. Like, it was a time when I went out, whenever I first got back into church, and I went out to speak. And when I was speaking to people, they were drawing and they were pulling on me, like I was supposed to give them something more, but I didn't know what else to give them, because I was in sin, because I was in flesh. I went, and I believe that God sent me on assignment to let me know what was in me and what he wanted to do, but there was nothing that I can do, and I could literally feel the pain of the people and feel them pulling on me to prophesy and to give them more. But because I was in sin, I wasn't led by the Spirit, and because I wasn't led by the Spirit, I couldn't give the people what it was that they needed. And I hope that makes sense. Another point is, I don't know whether I mentioned this or not. I think I did in the beginning, but no relationship with God. If you don't have relationship with God, you can go to the leaders or you want to and tell them how prepared you are and the things that you will see and how you're ready and how you want to move forward, but you don't have a relationship with God. So how you going to let God use you and you don't have a relationship with God? You just have his gifts. And having his gifts, he said in the book of Joel that he will pour his spirit out upon all flesh. So with him pouring his spirit out upon all flesh, he's pouring his gifts out, and people are seeing and they're knowing and they're prophesying and things of that nature. And you don't necessarily have to be plugged into God to receive these gifts if he's pouring his spirit out upon all flesh. So since all flesh has these gifts and you are not connected to God, how is God going to use you when you're not plugged into God, when you are not abiding in God, when you are not abiding in his word and his word is not abiding in you? So because you don't have that connection, you don't have that partnership, you don't have that oneness with God, you can be as gifted as you want to be. Now, let me add on some other things to this list. Sometimes there are people who are intimidated by your gifts. And because they are intimidated by your gifts, it has nothing to do with you. They won't use you because they refuse to use you, because they're intimidated by something that you have, because they think that you are going to show them up or you are going to be able to do something that they can't do. And because they can't do what it is that you are able to do, they are threatened that people are going to come to you instead of coming to them. So there is a side that does not reflect you. There are some people who are just flat out jealous. They don't want you to have the gift. They don't want it to be you. You don't look like the rest of us. You don't fit in here. You're too weird. You're too strange. You're too different. Oh, God don't speak like that. But then they see God show up and do the thing, but then they still won't acknowledge it simply because it's you. So you have people who won't use you because it's you. You have people who won't use you because they're threatened. They're in competition with you, Then you also have people who are just genuinely afraid. They don't know what to do with you. So because they don't know what to do, when you're having all the seeing and this and dreaming and doing things a new way, drinking new wine and doing things the way that God has given you to do it. When I say new wine, I mean new wine in the spirit. I don't mean like wine that you go buy from the liquor store. But because God is using you and pouring his spirit into you, and this is something different than what they're used to, then they can't, pick up and understand and see what the need is for what it is that you have. So they'll reject you and make you feel bad about things that you have, a gift that you have that you didn't ask for when God gave it to you, but nobody knows what to do with it. Then you have some people who look at you and they want to put you where they want to put you and want to sit you on a shelf and want to use you here because this is where I need you, instead of wanting to use you where it is that God called you to be. And let me also say this, because you are a prophet, because you are prophetic, it doesn't mean that you belong in the pulpit. It doesn't mean that you need to adorn the pulpit and be a part of the ministerial staff, because your gifts may not be called to speak from the pulpit. You may be called to advise and to steer your pastor or your leader in the right direction. This is the way that I think God is saying that we should go, and we should do this, and God is showing me that we need to add this, or we need to build this outreach, and we need to do a homeless shelter here. I saw in a dream where God built this station for people to be able to come and shower and things of that nature, and then people started coming from all around the city, and we built this whole community and ended up getting this $1 million grant because of this thing that we did for the homeless that was not in the city. Now the pastor did not receive that, but because you received it and you saw it and then you were able to lead the pastor and the church in that direction, it is how God used you. And it was not so much so that you can get in the pulpit and tell everybody about this shower outreach, when that's not the way that God wants to use you. Now there are some prophets who are called to the pulpit, and being called to the pulpit, God gives you a word, God gives you a message. God is going to use you prophetically and use you to be able to minister to the hearts and the minds and bring healing and set the captives free and things of that nature. And he'll give you the platform that he wants you to adorn. But you have to know who you are. Another reason why you probably can't go forth, because you don't know who you are. You don't know what you're called to do. You think that you're a prophet that's called to go anywhere and to do everything that anybody else is doing, whenever that's not the case. A lot of people don't want to accept the fact that there are people who are called to different functions and different mandates, and there are different things that you know have in your hand. Your sphere of influence may not be somebody else's sphere of influence. Your influence may just be to your church, or just may be to your community. People don't want to hear that, especially young prophets. What they want to hear is, and this is why people are not using you and giving you opportunity, because you think that because you are a prophet and you're seeing that you're supposed to automatically, be praised and be raised up and elevated and be sent out into the nations, when what you're saying is ABC. You haven't even grown into being a house prophet. You haven't even been grown into being a prophet over your own house, but you want to go and tell everybody else what to do. So when people don't use you, and you think people are hindering you and things of that nature, what God puts in place, nobody can hinder you. Nobody can stop you. Nobody can block you. People will not want to hear what it is that you're saying, but something in their heart will be pricked and moved if God is sending you to go to these people when you are ready. If that bread is baked and fresh and coming forth from God, everybody's going to want to partake in the aroma of God's presence, of the freshly baked bread that he has baked and given to the people. They are going to be hungry for what it is that you have. So anytime there's somebody blocking you and stopping you, then it's something in you that you need to look at, and not necessarily the person, or it's something in the person that is just being disobedient and just decided not to use you for whatever their personal reasons are. So, you have to figure out what it is. But when you go to people, you got to know who you are, know what you have, not just know your identity, not just know the gifts of what it is that you have, but who are you called to? What is your sphere of influence? What is God saying to you about where you need to be? Is this the house where you need to be? Is this the timing of you coming forward? There are things that you need to take into consideration and not just blame people. There's some of you who are called to your workplace. Some of you are called to City Hall and your state and, the marketplace and other places, that may not even be a church. But this is where God gets and puts you and wants you to be, so that you're able to see and infiltrate the plans and the assignments, the weapons of the enemy. You're in the house, and they don't even know that God has someone in the house who's able to see everything that's going on in the house whenever they get ready to bring down things and cause mass destruction and things of that nature. Instead of something being a big explosive, it ends up being a little spark of a sprinkle, a little piece of a firecracker, instead of something great and big. Because you were in the house with eyes to see. You were in position for such a time as this. So the call is not just for you to be everywhere, but people deny you for different reasons. Know who you are, get prepared, stay before God, and let God release you. And when God releases you, he either going to release you to go to those people, and their heart is going to be ready for the fresh bread that God has baked and given unto you, or the people are going to release you and say, I don't know what to do with you, go over here. And if the people don't release you, God is going to release you, and God will say to you, this is where I want you to go. This is where I want you to be. This is where I'm going to raise you up. Sit, be disciplined, and hear, and let me elevate you. Let me raise you up and put you into the position of where it is that I want you to be. All right? So those are just a few. There's a whole lot more that I could add to the list, but those are just a few things and a few reasons why people are not accepting you and seeing the call to the office of a prophet on your life, even though you are a prophet.